Hello, welcome to take, I don't even know what number this is for this video. I'm Hillary Raven Porter, Astral Shaman and Tamiana Starseed Oracle. And today I wanted to have a chat. I wanted to have a curiosity chat about something that might impact you. I know it impacts me. It impacts the area that I live in. I know it impacts a lot of beings that I see and that I work with, depending on where you live, of course. But I want to talk about spongy moth. I want to talk about the spongy moth spray. And the reason why I call this a curiosity chat is because I don't want to go into this saying this is wrong, this is right, this is good, this is bad. It's more, let's have an open dialogue about what is actually happening, what it actually means, the implications it can have, and are there other ways to go about it as opposed to this is the way we've always done it, so this is the way it always has to be, right? So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what is the spongy moth. We're going to talk about what they do, what they being the municipalities and the government. So anytime you hear me say they, I'm meaning the higher ups that put these programs in place to protect our environment. And what exactly are they spraying? What implications does that have on us, on the environment, on our fur friends, our fur babies? And then what we can also do to help protect ourselves and to possibly be involved, if that's what you have capacity and capability for. So let's start out talking a little bit about what the spongy moth is. We're gonna go through these guys too, but spongy moth is a non-native species. It's a non-native moth that was brought over from Europe for silk, right? It's the female is really beautiful. It's white. The male is beautiful in its camouflage. I keep getting, you'll notice in the background, these like light reflecting rays. So our lovely fur baby, Rosiekins, has a cone. She's got some wounds that she's healing. And when the light hits it, it reflects and it refracts around the room. Yeah, the old baby. A little cone of healing. So the spongy moth brought over, it's not native, and it loves to feed on certain trees. So the caterpillars will go and they will literally just strip the foliage. So if there's enough caterpillars, it could actually be detrimental to the plant that it's eating in that it can strip completely all the foliage. And in turn, what that does is it leaves the plant, the tree, the shrub susceptible to other insects and disease. Okay. And that's often what happens with non-native. They take over and they push out or kill other things that are in that area, right? Some of its favorites, so there's about 300 native species that this moth absolutely, it's like candy to them. Just like gobble it up. I love it so much, including oak, maple, birch, alder, and hawthorn. And we have our Gary oaks, right? So as we go throughout, we'll also be talking about like curiosity questions. I'm not going to say that I know the answers to any of these questions, but I want to spark the conversation as opposed to this is what they've always done. It must be safe. They told us it's safe, but they haven't given us all the information on these little cue cards. And even when I've gone to their website, I'm like, it doesn't actually give us all the information. There's still things that have been left out that you have to dig more for to get the info. And then what do we do with that info? Well, that's up to us, right? So of the 300 native species that can be host plants to the spongy moth, about 150, I know it said all 300 are the candy. No, it's about 150 are the candy. But 300 of the species, the spongy moth will be like, yeah, I could eat this. 150, they're like, oh, I'm dining here tonight. This is delicious, right? It's going to absolutely love it. So the more of those candy, we'll call them candy trees. The more of those candy trees in an area, the more likely you will have an outbreak. So an excess number of the spongy moth that is detrimental to the environment. Outbreak, excess amount, right? But let's say you have one in a field of 500. Well, it's less likely that an outbreak's going to happen because if they're called them intermediary trees where they're just like, I guess I could eat it if I have to, right? Those trees, the outbreak's probably not going to happen because they're not going to eagerly eat up the food and continue to grow and expand, right? It's not the space for them to, right? So the key there is there has to be enough, and this will come into play later. There has to be enough of the, yes, this is delicious trees in the area for the spongy moth for an outbreak to occur. Okay. Now, what do they tell us? They, again, being the municipalities. So we got these in the mail, right? Telling us, P.S. this is coming up. And by the way, here's a little bit more. See, there's the male. It doesn't actually show the female on there because the female's so pretty. And like information sessions, like come listen to us. We'll tell you more about the stuff and timings and treatments. Oh, actually, you know what's interesting? I just recognized. So last year, we got a card saying, hey, we're going to have an open forum. Come talk to us, ask your questions, learn about what we're doing, have an open dialogue. This year, we did not get one. This year, there doesn't mean it didn't happen, but we did not get one. That's interesting. So this first card talks about when they were doing the treatments, how they were doing them, what biological insecticide they were using, what time of day they will occur, how many times will they be doing it, and what to avoid. So to avoid contact with the spray, stay indoors during the time that we'll be spraying, plus an hour afterwards to allow the stuff to settle. And also it is recommended to follow standard good hygiene practices, including washing hands after any outdoor activities and washing all fruits and vegetables gathered from the treated areas before consumption, which will also play a part in one of my what question mark that we'll go into again later as well. And then stay informed. There's nothing, last year, this card was the one that said, stay informed, here's the information. So subscribe to the Spongy Moth news page. Signing up for the program notifications because they change the time depending on what the weather is going to be. If the weather shows rain, then they don't do it then. You can call the Spongy Moth info line, and then there's the website. So interesting. And then on the back, it talks about, so they sprayed 120 hectares of residential, commercial, and public lands this year. A lot. It's a lot of space. And then it says, okay, 4A, which is what they use, 4A, FORAY 48B, only impacts caterpillars that eat sprayed leaves and poses minimal risk to the health of people, livestock, pets, birds, fish, amphibians, spiders, other insects, or plants. It is commonly used in organic agriculture, and it's found naturally in the soil. Also that they'll be spraying from low-flying airplanes. Okay, so how do they determine if they need to spray? They determine if they need to spray based on traps that they've put out. My question is, when they put the traps out, how far apart are they spaced? So again, I'm not saying I have all the answers, and these are things that I might rabbit hole down later. But there are other things that come in when we're talking about things. We're like, oh, well, how many traps did they have? How far apart were they spaced? How many moths do they need to trap to then be able to say there's an outbreak? And who decided on that number? And how much of an impact have they actually seen it on the environment, right? Now, the active ingredient that they use is called Bacillus thuringiensis var. Kerstaki, or BTK, which is how I'll refer to it from now on instead of the tongue twister of a name. They say it occurs naturally in soil. Let's consider it occurs naturally in soil, but at what levels? I could give you a probiotic. I could give you a cup of probiotics. If I gave you a cap of probiotic versus a cup of probiotic, you're going to react way differently. So if something's in the soil, you're not going outside ingesting the soil. And what are the levels in the soil? So yes, it's naturally occurring, but natural doesn't equal okay. And medicine for one person is not medicine for another. So it's in the soil. Awesome. And what that does when somebody says, oh, it occurs naturally in soil, so it must be safe. No, that's not always the case. Because we also got to talk about levels and the person, and we're going to go into a little bit more, right? So another question, if it's so benign, why is it recommended that we don't go outside during the spray and for up to an hour afterwards? And not everybody has that capacity. What if you have to get to work and you have to go catch the bus? What if you work outside of that time of the day? It's usually between 5:30 and 7:30 in the morning. But there's people that are working at all hours now. Not everybody can just be like, yep, I'll just stay inside. I'll just switch my shift, right? The other thing is this hyper focus Another thing to consider is this hyper focus on one. Excuse me. This hyper focus on one species. Now, there's no right answer for this because, like, what do we do? So we have this species that could decimate our food supply and also decimate some of the native plants, which then provide homes and everything for the birds and the mammals and all that. Right? We have that. I'm gonna pause for a second. Okay, thank you. Apparently, my throat decided to say, no, thanks, I'm good. So thanks for the pause. Okay, so what was I talking about? I was talking about so we're focusing on the spongy moth, right? Which could decimate our trees and our food supply. And then if in doing so, it impacts the environment, the animals, the birds, all the things, right? But in the process, we're killing native species because it impacts also the native butterflies and moths. It's sad for me to say that when I look in my backyard, when we first moved in, I was like, there's butterflies and moths, and it was so beautiful. It was so great. They started spraying the following year. It's now the third year. It was so, I mean, it's impacting everything, which then impacts the birds and the mammals and all of that as well. So where's the balance? Where's the balance in that? Because BTK kills anything, any caterpillar that is eating, whether it's a moth or a butterfly, that is eating the leaves that has the BTK on it. Okay. Birds are super impacted. So for example, a chickadee needs 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to feed its little nestlings, to feed its brood each season. Well, if those aren't there, what happens to these guys? Do they go somewhere else? Do they just die off? What's the impact there? So with the moth, the natural life cycle, there's usually an outbreak about every 7 to 10 years that lasts about 1 to 3 years before, if there was no spraying, before they would naturally be brought into submission, if they would be reduced by natural means, right? You have an overage of a food supply. Well, the predator that feeds on that food supply is then going to increase because now it has all this food, and then it's going to help reduce that moth because all of a sudden you have more predators, right? And it's that cycle, that natural cycle. And is that actually possible? Has that been tested? Could that be tested? Have they tried that, or did it just go right to? I don't know. Another rabbit hole. There's also, during cool, wet springs, there's a natural fungus that happens. How cool, which will then control, so natural fungus, that'll happen to control the spongy moth. Have they tested, has the municipality tested to see if we have that fungus and in what capacities the fungus actually lives within this environment? But this is also the balance between time and money, right? That's going to take time and that's going to take money versus just blanket spraying. Why not spot spray? I'm curious how many of these candy trees, these trees that the spongy moth, absolutely delicious for them, how many of them are actually in the area that they're spraying? Or are there pockets of them where they could go, I picture those like little hand sprayers where you like pump the plastic ones and you spray. I know it takes time, but isn't it something we'd maybe want to consider if it's actually going to help save our native stuff, our native flora and fauna? Oh, hello, kitten. Oh, apparently we're going to have a visit. All right, this is usually our snuggle time. And I'm on the couch here. There you go, sweetie. Your little cone head. Okay, so just some things, again, considerations, the like curiosities, right? Now humans, it's considered safe. Considered safe. If it's considered so safe, why is it recommended that we don't go out in it? And up to an hour afterwards, right? There are other things out there, other paperworks, including the safety data sheet for 4A, 48B that say that it can cause diarrhea, digestive upset, allergy-like symptoms, right? And there have been studies, there have been like reports like, hey, we just did a spraying, and there was one in Ontario, and they'd ask the people after a blanket spraying, after like mass spraying, going through the cycle, hey, did you have any of these symptoms? Like, what kind of things did you experience after the sprays? And everything from sleep problems, irritated throat, stomach discomfort, itchy nose, dizziness, diarrhea, extra heartbeats, and a hard time concentrating all came up. I know in this house, oh my God, this bean, no, kidding. Um, but like Derek gets crazy, like literally it's like waterfall from his nose, the scratchy throat, you know, I get the itchy eyes. I have multiple different health things within my body and they all kick up, right? I get super itchy skin and we don't go out in it when it's first sprayed, but we still have to go about our day. So we're going out in it afterwards, right? So we definitely notice it. And this is why I started, really? This is why I started getting the questions popping up in my head of being like, hey, we are experiencing these things. I had clients experiencing them. I had clients that last year that were at a distance, like not super far distance, but they're in town, but they're in an area that wasn't directly sprayed. And they're like, all of a sudden, all these things kicked up. Well, they were within the radius with where the spray can travel to. So the aerial spray can travel up to 3,000 meters if weather conditions are right. So they try not to spray around rainy days because what happens? It just dampens it, it runs off all the stuff. But hi, sweetie. So they're spraying on clear days, and if there's a breeze, it can blow it to these other areas. Recently, they just sprayed. It was last week, hence the video. And I had a client come in from out of town. It was the same day, and they're just like, all of a sudden, my throat was itching. They're like, yeah, I showed up to Victoria and my throat was itching. I started getting scratchy skin. I could see this like haze, like what was going on? And that was the same day that they sprayed, right? Mass hacking and coughing coming up, dried hacking and coughing. Hi, sweetie. She agrees. Oh my goodness. She, she, yeah, I'm getting a little love here. I'm getting a little love support. Thanks, sweetie. Okay, so there's a study or a report from McGill University. Yeah. And oh, it was posted on the Journal of Pesticide Reform. So if you go to the Journal of Pesticide Reform and look up a study from the McGill University on spongy moth spray, then you'll find some more information as well. So just because something's natural doesn't mean it should be used indiscriminately. Hence my example at the beginning of here, I just like put you in a bathtub full of probiotics. You're fine, right? Not necessarily. It's natural. What's also medicine for you is not necessarily medicine for me. What is damaging to you is not necessarily damaging to me, and vice versa, right? So there was some animal testing done on this 4A 48B. And what was this testing showed? This testing showed when they force fed the rats the 4A 48B, that nothing really happened. But when they inhaled it, that's when they started seeing issues. They started seeing respiratory depression, so inability to actually breathe fully. When it was put directly into the blood, it aggravated the pre-existing diseases, and then topically it caused skin and eye irritation. It also doesn't necessarily leave our body that quick. There were some other studies. One was in Vancouver and one was in Lane County, Oregon. And they did cultures, right? Nasal swabs from people after the sprays, and they could still find spores. It was up to, I think it was 2 weeks afterwards, and they could find the spores still kicking around in this person's body. Yeah. So how safe is it? How benign is it? 4A 48B, FORAY 48B. What is this thing that they're spraying? It's not just the BTK, it's BTK plus inert ingredients, things that help smooth the way for them to apply. They're not just going, oh, here's some BTK, and then putting a cloud of dust over top of you. There has to be something like a medium for that BTK to be in, right? So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So it's made by Novo Nordisk. And they stated, Novo Nordisk states, the amount sprayed should be too small to develop new allergies. That's a key word there. Should be is also key. Too small to develop new allergies. It doesn't say it's not going to create any allergies or new allergies, but it's saying it should be too small. But it is possible if someone has a pre-existing allergy to a component, then they could possibly react even to this small amount. So if you're immunocompromised, if you have an autoimmune condition, if you already experience asthmatic conditions, it could create new allergies in you. And people that haven't had allergies before may develop allergies. They're saying that it shouldn't, but you could. It's that like 1% or that rare side effect. I'm the canary. So whenever it says there's a rare chance, there's like a 1% chance that you can get this, that's me. That's like, I'm the testing ground for those kinds of things. So yeah, it's possible. Before I alluded to the MSDS, which is the Material Safety Data Sheet. The Material Safety Data Sheet for 4A48B is from 1991. Hasn't been updated that I could find. But again, please go do your research. Please, any of these things that you're like, ooh, I'm curious, dive in. I encourage you to dive in and to become an active participant in your own existence on all levels. So in 1991, on the MSDS, it says repeated exposure via inhalation can result in sensitization and allergic response in hypersensitive individuals. Well, in 1991, we also didn't have all the EMF. We also didn't have as many chemicals kicking around as we do now in the way that we do now, and all the things that have been put into the body and all the food and all the other stuff. So back then, somebody who is considered hypersensitive, maybe now that's the norm that we live in, and the people that are hypersensitive are even beyond that. So how does that even apply? And there are repeated exposures. They do it, this is their third year having it, and they do it 3 times within that period, right? They spray it every 7 to 10 days for 3 times. Because the half-life of this is about 9 days. That means that's when it's no longer considered active. But we're going to get into that because that's one thing that they say, but then it shows otherwise within some studies that have happened. Now, I talked about inert. There's these inert ingredients, right? Kind of like the medium in which the BTK lives. Trade secret, but there is some information out there. They don't talk about proportions and all that other stuff, but there is some information as to what these ingredients are because there has to be a little bit put out there within the little hidey hole spaces. You know, sometimes they're like trade secret, but if you dig far enough, you will find these things. These are maybe the toxic things for people. And we're going to go through them, and highly likely, this is part of the case. So we have sodium hydroxide, sulfuric acid, phosphoric acid, 39-methylparaben, and potassium phosphate. My skin is crawling just reading those things because I know if I saw those things in my food, I wouldn't be buying that food. These make up less than 10%. They say these parts make up less than 10% of the final product, but they're doing a mass spraying. And like I said, some people are that 1% rarely will cause that thing. Well, that's 1% of those people. But still, if we're talking about a large amount that's being sprayed, 10%, like, so 10% of a liter, I don't know how much that comes out to. I know a quarter of a liter would be a cup. So then we're going to do, so like, that's still like a quarter of a cup-ish. But then in a mass amount, like how many hectares did I say that they did? Let's see here. They did 120 hectares. So I'm curious, how much do they actually spray? Okay, so let's take a little bit of a deeper look at these inert ingredients. Sodium hydroxide is a mild irritant to the nasal mucous membranes, to the passageway of your nose. Severe cases will actually experience damage to the upper respiratory tract. Sulfuric acid and phosphoric acid, well, they're both acid. What is acid? Acid is corrosive. Sulfuric acid, when placed directly on the skin, can cause deep skin burns and permanent loss of vision. Well, they're not going, here's some sulfuric acid and just pouring it on you. But again, a little bit for some people is enough to create the skin rash. And it's actually shown that the mist can cause severe bronchial constriction and bronchitis. We're like, yeah, but it's not coming into direct contact with our skin. It's going inside. Yeah, it's going inside. And that's a direct contact. Our digestive tract and our respiratory tract are 2 direct links into our body from the outside world. crazy. Phosphoric acid causes skin and mucous membrane irritation, and the vapor can cause coughing and throat irritation. What are they doing? They're spraying it. Methylparaben and potassium phosphate. They were once registered as pesticide active ingredients. My curiosity is, why did that designation get changed to being okay in an organic agricultural use? Sodium sulfite. Sulfite. Take away the sodium part. It's a sulfite. How many people are sensitive to sulfites and have reactions to sulfites? Up to 10% of people that experience asthma actually have a reaction to sulfites. In larger doses, so again, a mass spraying, but maybe even in a small dose for somebody, where are they at in their, have they been having asthma attacks for the last like month and their asthma is not under control? Well, then this could actually be an antagonist, and not everybody has the capacity to leave the space. Nausea, diarrhea, lower blood pressure, hives, shock, even loss of consciousness, right, can be triggered in people when they come into contact with sodium sulfite. We're talking about that 10% population, especially if they've been on steroids, actually have an increased chance of being sensitive to sulfite. So once BT is sprayed, it lives for a short time in the soil. But it says, because the half-life is supposed to be only 9 days. And then it's not, then after the 9 days, it's not supposed to be viable. Right? Oh, we're getting a gift. What'd you bring? Yeah. Oh, no, even I thank you. Thank you, sweetie. Okay. It doesn't travel well in the soil. So once it's in the soil, it doesn't travel around very well. Thank you so much. That was the best gift ever. They also say it doesn't last for long on the foliage, hence why they have to spray the 3 times, right? The half-life. And then also we've got the sun is supposed to deplete its viability, and then the rain is supposed to deplete its like wash it off, deplete the viability of it actually damaging the insects because it's no longer on the leaves. There was a study in Japan on citrus trees, and they found spores up to 2 years later. I mean, my curiosity about the study, so that's just interesting to know. My curiosity about the study is what portion, like what was the percentage that they found? Was it just like a spore? Was it 50% of the spores? So I'd be curious about that. And then there was also another study where they found it a year later on white spruce. I unfortunately did not note where that was located on the white spruce, like what country that was in. But again, what percentage was still there? I'm curious. I'm curious. It has been found, the BTK after the spraying has been found in the groundwater, has been found in the rivers, and standard water treatment systems don't destroy it. So what municipality are you in? What does the treatment center have? Is the treatment center actually enough? I know that the study said, oh, when it was ingested, it doesn't actually create challenges in the body. But does it really not? You can't really ask a rat, what are you feeling in your body? Okay, the moths. The more you spray them in the higher doses, the more likely they are to actually become resistant. Okay, so what were some of the questions we have here? Some of the questions, some of the curiosities of just like pondering are, is there another way? Could they spot treat? How many moths actually does it take them to find to then be like, we have to eradicate? How is that taking care of the native species other than the trees? How is it actually impacting? Like, have there been studies about how is it actually impacting the birds and the other mammals that eat those insects? What about the natural butterflies and moths in the area, right? If they actually left it, would it naturally take care of itself? Would the environment actually take care of it and the increase in bird population make sure that those butterflies or those moths, sorry, the spongy moth doesn't actually become excessive? Question. But what can you do? What can you do? One, be curious. That's what we're doing here. Be curious. Awesome. If you have the capacity and the capability, go to the meetings, ask the municipality, ask city council. Why did they decide to do it? Don't just take it, well, because, or we had some numbers. Awesome. Can you show me those numbers? Can you tell me more about how you got those numbers? Be like that kid that's like, why? 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 To everything that they say. Or why? Right? Okay, cool. I hear you. And this is what we've always done. Have they tried spot testing? Have they tried just eradicating in a different way? Have they like why? Asking all these. And again, this is if you have the capacity. Not everybody is meant to do all of these things. Maybe you have a full up. Maybe you were like, your schedule's full, you're good. But there's other ways. So how do you take care of yourself? Well, oh, that's another recipe. If you can't go to city council or you don't have the capacity and capability to do so, just start sharing information with your friends. Be like, hey, I watched this video. I hadn't really ever thought about these questions in regards to the spray, but I know that the last time it happened, we had a conversation. Like you noticed some stuff kicking up in your body. I noticed some things. I know my sleep was impacted. I know I started getting allergies and stuff like that. And then this came up, and this was a question. What do you think about this? And then the more we talk about it, the more it filters down. And then the people that do have the capacity to go to the municipality and city council and all of that. Yeah. Okay. Air filter. Okay. Air filter. HEPA. If you can do a HEPA air filter, do it. Because even if your windows are closed, it doesn't just go, we sprayed at 7:30, at 8:30, it's all depleted. My, doesn't it kick up again? Like if it's on your car and then it blows off the car when you start driving your car. HEPA filter, if you can. Whatever you have outside, cover it if you can, and then wash the cover. So if you cover it with a tarp, wash it, or bring the stuff in. So if you have chairs and stuff outside, or for other furniture or other things, bring it inside if you can. If you can't, and they're outside, just spray them down, wipe them down. I like to go out with the hand watering can and water down everything. Right? If you can, leave the area. This is hard because we don't all have the capacity to be like, oh, look, they sprayed. And then 10 days later, they sprayed. And then 10 days later, they sprayed. Maybe you can't go away that many times, or maybe you can't go away at all. If you can shift your shift, switch your shifts so that you're not having to go out in it at that time of day, awesome. If you can't, you can't. So we're doing what we can, right? If you walk outside, when you walk outside, don't walk into your house with your shoes. Take your shoes off at the front door. Also, our fur babies, they're walking around, they are ingesting it. And again, the studies show that ingestion isn't where the challenge is, but that those were based on BTK. Those studies I talked about were based on BTK. The studies based on they ingested it or it went on the skin, those kinds of things, right? Yeah. Support your system. If your system is more robust, you're more likely to not have reactions to these things. So whole organic food as much as possible. If you can't eat all organic, take a look at the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 list. The EWG website has a great list of that every year to look at the ones that are like the foods, the fruits and veggies that are high in pesticides and the ones that are lower. Put your money into the ones that are higher pesticides. Put those ones into like buy organic of those guys, right? Keeping your health activity up, whatever you can for your activities. If you can't go outside, go to the swimming pool, right? If you can't do the swimming pool, go to the gym. You can't go to the gym, do some yoga at home. Like keeping the movement and the body going that way actually helps with the nervous system as well, right? Wash your hands when you come inside. You've been outside, like, I just touched the door of my car and I just touched the door of my place. Wash your hands. Get that stuff off of there. Thymus tapping. This area, the thymus is under this lovely little bone here, you know, our breastplate. Our thymus is right under there. And by tapping it, we're stimulating it to create the immune cells that we need in our body to help us be healthy and to process all that we need to process when it comes to any of the bugs going into our immune system. Okay. So doing that each day, like 5 minutes, you'll be doing it while you're waiting for something. You're like standing there waiting for your coffee. waiting for the tea kettle at the stoplight. There we go, right? Mine's a little tender. Acupressure. Let's talk about some acupressure for self. Here we go. Stomach 36. So you can look these up online. I'm going to give you my best description that I can. Yin Yang House is a great website that I love. It has some good descriptions, but stomach 36 acupuncture point. So you're going to run your hand up your shin until you hit like the little bump just below the knee. And then you're going to roll your finger to the outside of your leg. And you're going to find a little tender spot just on the other side there, stomach 36. It's proven to increase white blood cell count. Just press it. Use a pen, like the tip of the pen with the nib in. At finger, right? Dito na masakit. Stomach 36, both sides. Spleen 6 is the other one, SP6. Inside of your lower leg, about a hand width, this way, from your inner ankle bone up, and then it's right in between the muscle and the bone. Press it. Most people, the spot's very tender. And then we've also got lung 7. So, hand, this is the back of the hand. And when you run down just the outside there, and there's like a little nubbin right there, right? You feel a little groove in there. Mine's right at the end of the tendon. So there's the tendon when you flex, and it's like right there. Speaking of lungs. Okay, those are all points that you can press upon yourself to help. Go get acupuncture, go get Reiki, go get energy work. Those are all going to help your core energy space have enough to protect yourself. If it's weak, then more of the things can get in and we can't defend ourselves as well within and energetically, right? Now, herbs, immune system support. Not all medicine is for all people. So I'm going to tell you 3 of my favorite herbs to use to help people with their immune system, but these might not be right for you. If you have other conditions, health conditions, or you have allergies, it's best to seek a professional or somebody else that you work with to make sure that the herbs are the ones that are right for you. So the first one, most people know echinacea. Lovely, so good, right? And you want to be starting these herbs about 2 weeks before you know the spray is going to be happening, and then continue for about 2 weeks after, just to really support the system in going into it, and then also to help it continue as you're coming to the end of it. Because it's not just like they sprayed, it's done. No, it's still kicking around, right? Cordyceps, absolutely love cordyceps. It's like the all over everything Panacea unicorn herb. It's so good. And it's specific also for the lung and the kidney systems and the digestive tract. Considered a longevity, really boosts the immune system like a lot. I will give you the caution for this one. It really boosts the immune system in a way that if you have an autoimmune condition, it can also boost that reaction as well. In the sense that when you have an autoimmune condition, your immune system is attacking you, right? And so if the immune system gets boosted, it's not just boosting the like helpful stuff, it's also boosting the reaction of attacking onto self, or it can. It's not always a guarantee, but it can. And cordyceps really very much does this. Ecchi, a little bit different in how it does it. Echinacea. And then scoot bike. Scoot bike is the other one that I really like. Scutellaria bicalensis or Baikal skullcap. Anti-inflammatory, antiviral, anti-allergy, all these things. All 3 of these are. The cordyceps is the one though that I've noticed the most reaction in regards to people with autoimmune conditions. So just take note on that one. So yeah. Whew. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being curious. And I'm curious, how has your being reacted if there has been sprays in your area? What have you noticed that switches and changes and gets kicked up in your body? How do you feel when it happens? What does anything I talked about today spark in you? Are there things that are like, oh yeah, well, I'm more curious about that. I want to go look up that thing, that fact, that piece. So again, I'm not proposing I have all the answers. I'm not saying something's right or wrong or good or bad, but here's some more data of, oh, never thought about that. they told me it was a natural pesticide or insecticide. And I just assumed that meant it was safe, because natural doesn't always mean safe. I can give you some belladonna. It's natural and kill you, right? Okay. So thank you. Stay curious, stay conscious, and talk to you soon. So much love in Stardust. Bye for now.